The British media is now grappling with the fact that the monarchy will die without the Sussexes. That is what they are saying in this article. They are telling the future King and Queen of England that they have to make up with Harry and Meghan, or else nobody will be tuning into the show. And they're not just telling Will and Kate, they're also telling King Charles. They're saying that evicting the Sussexes from Frogmore Cottage and letting it sit empty looks bad, which is what we have been saying for years. Charles evicted them because he was feeling petty after Harry released Spare and after they went on Oprah, and allowing it to sit empty doesn't look good for their homeless initiatives. They basically have palaces sitting empty, so why would they need to kick out Harry and Meghan? That could have been their safe space that they came back to if they wanted to see the king.
What we are witnessing right now is a conversation that has been quietly building for years, but is now becoming impossible to ignore. For a long time, the British media served as one of the loudest cheerleaders for the monarchy, rarely allowing serious questions about the institution's long-term relevance to enter mainstream discussion. Yet recently, something interesting has begun to happen. In certain corners of the press, commentators are starting to acknowledge an idea that would have sounded almost unthinkable not long ago. The suggestion is simple but powerful. The future relevance of the monarchy may depend, at least in part, on reconciliation with Prince Harry and Meghan. At first glance, that claim may seem dramatic. After all, the British monarchy has existed for more than 1,000 years. It has survived wars, political revolutions, economic upheaval, and massive social transformation. The institution has endured because it has repeatedly managed to adjust to the expectations of different eras. When the world changed, the monarchy eventually found ways to change with it. But longevity alone does not guarantee lasting relevance. Institutions can exist for centuries and still gradually lose their cultural importance if they fail to maintain a meaningful connection with the people they claim to represent. In the modern era, the monarchy relies less on political authority and far more on public perception. Its influence depends on whether people around the world continue to care about it. And that is where the conversation becomes fascinating. In earlier centuries, the monarchy maintained its status through ceremony, distance, and mystique. The royal family existed at a remove from everyday life. The public saw carefully managed glimpses of royal events, but the inner workings of the institution remained hidden behind palace walls. That distance created an aura of grandeur and stability. Today, however, we live in an entirely different media landscape. Social media, streaming platforms, and constant digital connectivity have transformed the way public figures interact with audiences. People now expect transparency, authenticity, and relatability. They want to feel as though those in positions of influence understand real-world experiences. This shift has fundamentally changed the way the monarchy is perceived. Royal life is no longer confined to ceremonial appearances or official press releases. Every gesture, every statement, and every silence becomes part of a global conversation that unfolds in real time across millions of screens. In such an environment, attention has become one of the monarchy's most valuable currencies. If people stop paying attention, the symbolic power of the institution begins to weaken. Tradition provides the foundation, but public fascination is what keeps the entire structure standing in the modern world. And this is where Prince Harry and Meghan enter the story in a very significant way. When Prince Harry married Meghan in 2018, the event captured the world's imagination. Millions of people who had never previously followed royal news suddenly tuned in. The wedding represented something new and exciting. Meghan, An American actress with a mixed cultural background seemed to symbolize a moment of modernization for the monarchy. For a brief period, the atmosphere surrounding the royal family felt different. There was optimism that the institution might be entering a new era, one that reflected the diversity and complexity of the modern world. But the period that followed told a very different story. Instead of fully embracing the moment as an opportunity for renewal, the institution appeared to respond with caution and rigidity. The intense scrutiny directed at Meghan quickly became one of the most discussed aspects of her time within the royal system. Headlines analysed her wardrobe choices, body language, family background, and even her tone of voice with extraordinary intensity. What stood out to many observers was not simply the criticism itself, but the contrast in how similar actions were portrayed depending on who performed them. Behaviours that had once been described as charming or relatable when carried out by other royal figures were suddenly framed as controversial or inappropriate when Meghan did the same things. Over time, this disparity became increasingly difficult for audiences to overlook. Conversations began emerging about whether deeper biases were influencing the media narratives surrounding her. As the public watched these dynamics unfold, sympathy for Harry and Meghan began to grow in many corners of the world. Fast forward to the present day, and the situation has evolved in ways few people predicted. When Harry and Meghan stepped back from their official royal duties, some critics assumed they would fade quietly into the background of public life. Instead, the opposite happened. They built independent platforms that allowed them to speak directly to global audiences without relying on traditional royal communication channels. Through documentaries, public discussions, philanthropic initiatives, and Harry's memoir, they began sharing their perspectives on issues that had long remained hidden behind royal protocol. Rather than presenting the polished fairy tale image traditionally associated with monarchy, they chose to speak openly about personal struggles, mental health, media pressure, and the emotional complexity of living inside such a powerful institution. This shift in tone resonated strongly with modern audiences. Many people felt they were seeing a more human side of royal life, one that acknowledged vulnerability rather than maintaining a distant image of perfection. In doing so, Harry and Meghan created a new kind of influence. Their impact no longer depended on palace titles or official roles. Instead, it came from storytelling, relatability, and direct connection with the public. Influence like that does not simply disappear because an institution wishes it would. Another moment that intensified the public debate involved the decision by King Charles to remove Harry and Meghan from Frogmore Cottage. On the surface, the move could easily be framed as routine property management within the royal estate. Royal residences are frequently reassigned or repurposed, depending on changing circumstances. However, in the world of royal symbolism, very little is ever purely administrative. Frogmore Cottage carried significant emotional meaning. It was the first home Harry and Meghan shared as a married couple, and the place where they began establishing their identity as working members of the royal family. It represented the early stage of their life together, a moment filled with optimism about their future roles within the monarchy. When access to that home was removed, many observers interpreted the decision as more than a logistical adjustment. Symbolically, it appeared to close a door on the possibility of maintaining a physical connection to their former royal life. Public perception matters deeply for an institution like the monarchy. Because its authority is largely symbolic rather than political, The royal family relies heavily on the belief that it represents continuity, fairness and service. Whenever royal decisions appear inconsistent with those values, critics quickly gain momentum in the public conversation. In the age of digital media, these discussions can spread globally within hours. That is why the debate surrounding Frogmore Cottage became such a widely discussed topic. The house itself was never the central issue. What it represented, a fracture in family relationships, was what captured public attention. Historically, the monarchy has survived internal conflicts by presenting a united public image. Disagreements occurred privately rather than unfolding in front of a global audience. That tradition changed dramatically during Harry and Meghan's interview with Oprah Winfrey. The interview marked a turning point because it moved the conversation from speculation into direct testimony. For the first time, viewers heard personal accounts of life inside the institution, including discussions about mental health challenges and feelings of isolation. Whether people agreed with every detail shared during the interview or not, the impact was undeniable. The royal narrative shifted from one of distant perfection to something far more human and complex. For younger audiences especially, this honesty felt refreshing. Suddenly, the royal family was no longer just a collection of fairy tale images. It was a family dealing with pressures, misunderstandings, and emotional struggles like many others. Looking ahead, the question of the monarchy's future becomes particularly interesting. Eventually, the institution will transition into the era led by Prince William and Catherine. They are often portrayed as a stable and widely supported pair within the royal structure. However, they will face a challenge that previous generations of monarchs did not encounter in the same way. Modern audiences are not automatically loyal to institutions simply because they have existed for centuries. Today, people connect with individuals and stories. They respond to authenticity. They engage with narratives that feel real rather than carefully scripted. In that environment, the story of Harry and Meghan carries enormous narrative power. Harry's life alone reads like the arc of a modern epic. He grew up in the spotlight, endured the tragic loss of his mother under intense media scrutiny, served in the military, and spent years advocating for mental health awareness. Eventually, he chose to step away from royal duty in order to protect his family and create a different path. Meghan's journey adds another layer to the story. She entered one of the oldest institutions in the world as an outsider, faced enormous expectations and criticism, and ultimately forged a new independent identity outside the traditional royal framework. Together, their experiences created a storyline that captured global attention in a way few royal narratives have in recent decades. To put it a bit humorously, the monarchy sometimes resembles the world's longest-running reality show. It has castles, elaborate ceremonies, dramatic family dynamics, and occasional plot twists involving interviews, memoirs, and headline-grabbing controversies. But like any successful series, what keeps audiences watching are compelling characters. And whether people admire them or criticize them, Harry and Meghan remain two of the most compelling figures in the entire royal story. This is why some commentators have begun suggesting that reconciliation between Harry and the rest of the royal family might not only be emotionally beneficial, but also strategically wise for the institution itself. Imagine the narrative if bridges were rebuilt. A story of healing after conflict. Brothers reconnecting after years of tension. A centuries-old institution demonstrating the ability to learn and evolve. Such a storyline would capture global attention in a far more positive way than the ongoing speculation about family divisions. Of course, reconciliation within any family is complicated. Disagreements can take years to resolve, and trust is not easily rebuilt once it has been broken. When those personal challenges are combined with royal protocol, public scrutiny, and international media coverage, the complexity multiplies. Yet history shows that institutions survive not by resisting change forever, but by eventually adapting to it. Harry and Meghan have already demonstrated one form of adaptation. After stepping away from official royal roles, they built new platforms for philanthropy, advocacy and storytelling. Their work in mental health awareness, charitable initiatives and media production shows a willingness to engage with modern audiences in creative ways. Meanwhile, the monarchy continues to operate largely through traditional ceremonies and carefully managed public appearances. Both approaches serve different purposes. But it is difficult to deny that the Sussexes' style of communication resonates strongly with younger global audiences. So when people say the monarchy needs Harry and Meghan, what they may really mean is that the institution could benefit from the kind of energy, relatability and modern engagement that the couple represents. In the modern world, relevance is not something that can simply be inherited. It has to be earned continuously. Perhaps the greatest irony of this entire story is that Harry and Meghan never set out to become symbols of institutional change. Their initial requests were relatively simple: support, dignity, and the space to build a healthy family life. When those needs were not fully met, they chose to create that space themselves. That decision reshaped the royal narrative in ways that continue to influence public conversations today. As the story continues to unfold, one question remains in the air. Will the monarchy learn from this chapter and evolve alongside the expectations of modern audiences? Or will it continue relying primarily on traditions that were designed for a very different era? History suggests that survival for institutions like the monarchy depends on their ability to adjust to changing times. And sometimes the individuals who push those changes forward are the very people who were initially pushed out. Love them or criticize them, Harry and Meghan have undeniably reshaped the way people talk about royalty, media responsibility, and the balance between public duty and personal well-being. Their influence on the global conversation is significant, and it may ultimately become one of the defining legacies of this period in royal history. Now, I want to hear what you think. Do you believe reconciliation between Harry and the royal family is possible, or has too much happened over the years? Would rebuilding that relationship strengthen the monarchy, or do you think the institution will continue moving forward on its current path? Share your thoughts and join the conversation.